Curator of Collections and Exhibits here at the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. And today I'm going to answer a few of the questions that you guys submitted via Instagram stories. Okay, so one of your first questions was, what does a curator do? So a curator is really in charge of caring and preserving for historic objects. And those objects can be housed in a historic house, a museum like the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, or an art gallery. Curators really care about the longevity of an object, and so we care about the housing and the storage of these objects and the environment that they are in. We also research and we publish those findings either through an exhibit or through some sort of scholarly publication or at a conference. And exhibits, when we go down that avenue, those typically are very time-consuming and they're a lengthy process. We like to plan those about 2 to 3 years in advance, sometimes even 4 years in advance. For example, at the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, we have our exhibits planned out until 2022 with even ideas for 2023. I frequently work with my colleagues, the Curator of Education and the Communications Coordinator, who help me brainstorm and implement ideas on how to promote the collection either online or through public programs. And curators also are constantly thinking of ideas of how to expand the collection or actually remove objects from the collection. And expanding the collection is typically done through accessioning, and you either purchase an object or that object is gifted to your museum. And deaccessioning is another way of formally removing an object from your collection, and typically you go through that through several avenues. We use a collections committee and our board of trustees who formally approve that. And all of this is guided by our collections management policy, which I will dive into in another question that one of you guys asks. But the most important thing is safeguarding our collection. And we want to safeguard it and we want to ensure the longevity of it. So you can come visit this collection in 2050 and all of the objects will be in superb condition. And I usually do this by checking the exhibits typically daily. And I want to ensure them, just see if anything has fallen down, if there's any sort of deterioration that is occurring. And I typically look for any spots that need to be cleaned or anything along those lines. And I also have data loggers and a dehumidifier that monitors the relative humidity in the building. Okay, to answer the second part of that question, what is an average day like as a curator? Well, each day is different, and that's why I love my job. One day I could be conducting research on an upcoming exhibit, or I could be mounting an exhibit, which, as I explained, is quite the lengthy process. I could be dealing with incoming loans or outgoing loans and the paperwork that goes with that task. I could be monitoring my emails and fielding any calls dealing with donations or potential gifts to the museum. I could be working on data entry within our collections management system, and we use Past Perfect here at the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts. I could be relocating or rehousing objects in our collection storage facility, and typically I like to rehouse objects in acid-free tissue, acid-free boxes. I can put them in these storage units on these flat shelving, and I put ethafoam there. I can do an inventory of our collection and really see what we have, where we have it, to ensure it's in its proper place. I monitor the dehumidifiers and our data loggers to make sure our collection is safe and it's at a good temperature and it's at the proper humidity levels that we need to care for our collection. I can also write content for our online outlets and e-newsletters. I can also work in public programs and work with our Curator of Education on any other projects. So it's quite the varied day. So what I would like to add is my average day has been tweaked a bit due to the COVID-19 crisis and the stay-at-home orders that the New Jersey governor has mandated. And so a lot of the work I'm doing is I'm working from home and I'm staying at home, I'm staying safe, although I am able to come into the museum by myself and check on the collection and ensure everything is okay and nothing is harming the collection or the building. So to answer another question, why did you choose to do this job? Well, growing up, I absolutely loved history. I loved reading. I loved asking questions, and I absolutely loved art. And I wanted to know how were things made and who did this. And I was also lucky to go to several museums, art galleries, historic houses, historic sites growing up. My parents put that in all of our vacations. And also my mom was an artist, and I was able to join her on several of her classes, and she would take me with her. I would sit in the back of the class and I would watch these artists work, and the process was something that I absolutely loved and I was curious about, because this person is making this thing, so why are they making it? And I started to be very inquisitive and ask questions about the process in making and the final product. And so fast forward to when I went to undergrad, and I majored in history and art history, and then I went to graduate school and focused on the history of decorative arts. And I love the intersection of history and art and objects. And so that's really why I chose to be a curator. I want to educate the public on something that I love, and I love history, and I love objects, and I love their intersection. But also, I am just a natural, curious person. I like to ask questions. How was this made? Where was it made? Who made it? Who did they make it for? What tools did they use? And where did they source the materials from? And then another thing is, how did it get to the museum? Who collected it? Why did they collect it? And these questions are essential to being a curator. You want to ask questions and never stop asking questions. And that's why I love visitors asking questions. Never be afraid to ask any question, and I will answer it to the best of my ability, or I'll even say, I don't know that answer. But I chose this job because I absolutely love history, and I love research and reading. Okay, so this is a great question. Why do museums collect things? So, and in particular, why do we collect ordinary tools? So first, let me answer the first question is, why do museums collect things? Well, do you collect anything? I know I collect magnets. So if I go somewhere new, I always make it a point to go to a gift shop or get something on the airport on the way out. So I get a magnet. So whether it's London, Munich, Italy, Florida, Arizona, Georgia, Tennessee, New York, Maine, I have a magnet, and I put it on my fridge, and it's just a friendly reminder that I went to that place. And so think of this in the bigger scheme of museums. So the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts was founded in 1970 by Agnes and Edgar Law Land through a donation of their personal collection of pre-industrial hand tools and objects. And so this core collection here has been supplemented by donations, so like gifts from any individual person, or we have acquired things by purchasing them over the years. And so now we have about 8,600 objects that represent 21 different trades. And the intention of the museum is to preserve and interpret the tools used before the rise of industrialization in the United States. So another thing that really guides collecting for any museum, and why do we collect things, is this thing called a collections management policy, which I sort of hinted at in another question that I answered, is that collections management policies are really this document that guides curators and collections managers on why do they collect and what are you collecting. So for example, the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts collects historic objects and tools from the 18th and 19th century, so before 1900, that were primarily produced and used in New Jersey or its neighboring states, so like Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York. But most importantly, we love historic objects or artifacts that connect to a specific individual, company, shop, or family in New Jersey or the neighboring states. And we typically collect anything that's like a ordinary hand tool, like some of the ones behind me, or the workbenches, or anything that they were made on, and then that final product, so like a chair, or a pair of shoes, or a top hat, or a tin lantern. And so that way we're able to say, hey, we have the tools and we have the final product. Okay, so to answer the second part of that question, so why do we collect ordinary tools? Why do we collect any sort of ordinary object? And really, the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, we love to inspire a connection to New Jersey's history, culture, trades, and crafts. We want to inspire you to find a connection, and a connection to that tool, a connection to that finished product, a connection to that spinning wheel, to that plane, to that saw, anything. And so look, when you look at one of those tools, you will probably see something that you have used probably within the last couple days, weeks, months, years. And so these tools were things that have been used for hundreds of years, but also these tools were used to make that finished product. That finished product could be a pair of shoes, could be a wedding dress, could be a gown, or it could be a chest of drawers, it could be a coffin, it could be anything. And so these tools really tell the story of how something was made. And it is our jobs as curators to show you and tell you and interpret those tools in a way that makes it easier for you to understand. And we do that through exhibits or publications or anything like that. But we collect ordinary tools because our founders, Agnes and Edgar Lawland, created this museum through the donation of their personal collection of pre-industrial tools. So we continue to collect any sort of tool or finished product or archival material like a ledger or a daybook or receipts, advertisements that relate to the early trades and crafts of New Jersey or its neighboring states. This is one of my favorite questions so far. Why can't I touch things in a museum? Well, if you ask any museum professional, we will all tell you, please do not touch anything in a museum. My favorite thing to tell visitors or anyone who comes with me to a museum, even me, is that look with your eyes, not your hands. So museum best practices really require us to minimize the amount of time we spend handling objects. Over time, the dirt and the oils on our hands can drastically alter the state of an object. And if you touch the object with your bare hand, then without washing them, you can transfer the dirt and the oils on your hands to the historic object, whether it's copper, tin, glass, furniture, textiles. Additionally, the oils on your hands attract dirt to linger. And acidic oils can also drastically degrade metallic surfaces. Think of copper or any sort of luster that you see on a ceramic object. As a curator, I always like to minimize the amount of time I handle an object. First, I always like to wash my hands before I decide to handle an object. Next, I put on these gloves, these nitrile gloves that I'm wearing right now, and I review the object. I examine it. I look at its weak spots. And then I always handle the object with two hands. If an object is too big, I always call in one of my colleagues and I ask them to assist me. They also are wearing gloves. And then we always know where we are going to place the object. So if it is on a shelf, I immediately know I'm going to transfer it to a table that has a padded surface. Either that surface will have ethafoam or a moving blanket or furniture blanket. On many occasions, I use a padded cart with the same thing, either acid-free tissue, ethafoam, or a moving blanket. And after handling an object, I always safely remove my gloves. And I'm sure several of you have seen the videos of some of our first responders, our hospital staff, taking off their gloves safely. That's exactly what we do as well. And then we remove our gloves, we throw them away, and then I immediately wash my hands. Overall, a trained professional should always handle an object, not only for the object's safety, but for your safety. So when you visit a museum and you see the do not touch sign, just think, don't touch. Remember what the curator at the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts told me. Okay, another great question. What is your favorite object? Well, fun fact, I actually joined the museum a couple months ago, and every day I'm finding something that's my favorite object. I am a huge fan of woodworking tools and any implement used to create a historic object out of wood. So lucky for me, the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts has hundreds upon hundreds of woodworking tools and implements. It is fascinating to me to see the number of tools that was used to make a chest, to a coffin, to a chair, to a desk. Okay, do you frequently get asked what objects are? Absolutely, and that is totally okay. At a museum like the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, we are unique in the fact that we collect the tools and the implement used to create that final product or that historic object. Like I was telling you guys earlier, we have the tools used to create a shoe, from the shoe last to the bench to any other tool in between. And there are even days when I look at a tool and have to really think, what is this tool? What did it make? How was it used? And that's the best part of my job because I'm so inquisitive. And since I am inquisitive, I want to know what the object is. And it's a great question to always ask, what is this? Don't be scared to ask any and all questions. The more questions you ask, the more you know. Okay, this is one of the last questions. How to fix a broken canvas? Well, this is a great question, but typically what I do as a curator is I will contact an individual called a conservator. There, that trained professional can repair whatever I need. And I will always go to the American Institute for Conservation or culturalheritage.org. And on the website, it offers a function called Find a Conservator. You can narrow your search to a city or a state and even the specialty that you need. So you can do paintings, you can do textiles, you can do books, anything. Always contact a trained professional before you do anything on a historic object. These people have gone to school and they are always very helpful. Some museums have conservators on staff. At the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts, we do not have a conservator on staff. So if I have something that needs to be repaired, I will contact a conservator and ask for their help. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for spending the time to ask me these great questions, but for also staying tuned and listening to my answers. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or find anyone's email on the Museum of Early Trades and Crafts website. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing you soon once the museum reopens. Stay safe. Thank you.